AI is not going to be able to read a room. They're not going to be able to know who to bring into a conversation at what time to gain that buy-in and who is the decision maker within those companies that you want to get their support so that you can then help move that initiative forward.
Welcome to the All-In Recruitment podcast by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. I'm your host, Lydia, and this week we have Chris Berta, who is partner at Laurel Group. Thank you for joining us, Chris.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Lydia. Thank you for having me.
So you have extensive experience in the industry, decades, right? So how have you seen the executive search landscape evolve, particularly in tech?
Yeah, so I'm in Seattle and we have partners in Silicon Valley as well. And so we've really been on the cutting edge of where technology has come and evolved from. And so we, in 2 decades worth of recruiting, we've seen companies go from on-prem to SaaS. You've seen the evolution and development of cloud companies. So we've been at the cutting edge of AWS and seeing that start from scratch. We've seen Azure, we've seen Google and all these different cloud providers. And now, of course, you have generative AI, which is disrupting the landscape and seeing all the different companies that are growing out of that. So we focus on growth companies. And so these are companies that get VC or private equity funding, and they're primarily technology companies. And we've seen them get consumed by the larger companies who we also have done work with. And so working with AWS with an acquisition that they've done over the years. And so watching the different winners and then the companies that haven't survived in those different transitions has been fascinating. And so it's been just fun to be at the cutting edge of and really at the ground floor of many of these companies and the technology development that they've had.
So tell us a little bit more about Laurel Group.
Sure. So we're a partner-led organization. And so the two founders who had started the Laurel Group had come from Heidrick & Struggles. And Heidrick & Struggles is like the 800-pound gorilla for executive search. So public company. And so the two founders had come from there and just wanted to start their own boutique firm. And we focus on technology companies, by and large, or companies that want to become more technology enabled. And then we focus on really the entire executive suite. My background was product management and online marketing. And so I like to focus on the go-to-market functions within a company. So that could be product management, marketing, or sales. But oftentimes, we'll have a company that I'll place a VP of product or chief product officer. And then they say, hey, can you take on these other functions, VP of engineering or the like? And so we end up filling out the entire suite of those organizations. A good example would be like a company called DuckDuckGo, which is a privacy search engine. We started off as a head of biz dev role that I filled. And then from there, head of product, VP of product, VP of engineering, CFO. And so built out a large part of their executive suite because of our knowledge of the business, knowledge of how to sell that to the market. And that's really where I think our bread and butter is just understanding our clients' value proposition and bringing that to market.
And how has AI, there's a lot of talk and there's a lot of implementation, different use cases for AI, right? And so how has AI transformed your executive search processes at Laurel Group over the past few years?
Yeah, I would say that it's accelerated a lot of the functions that we've had. So when it comes to research or it comes to developing content or marketing, because my background's been, in marketing as well. So just in those capabilities, we've been able to accelerate a lot of that development. And for our clients, quite frankly, it's actually impacted their business and their recruiting process in a lot of cases in a negative way, quite frankly, because it's almost become too easy to apply to jobs. So they're overwhelmed with the amount of applicants that they're seeing. And so we end up, I did a paper about this where on average, there's 400 applicants for every role that's posted. And so if you that if a company has 10 roles, then that's 4,000 applicants that they're having to go through. And, if during COVID and downsizing of different functional areas, if they've cut back on the amount of recruiters, now those recruiters are just being overwhelmed with the sheer volume of candidates who are applying for these roles. And so I actually think that is helpful for executive search and agencies, because we can help sort through that sheer volume and just bring to the table the right handful of candidates who they should be talking to. And we can help comb through a lot of those, the noise that's out there. But I just feel like it's become, like I said, too easy to apply for a role. And the other example I use is that if a company is using AI to write their job description, and then they post it online, and then candidates can use different tools to have their resume and their cover letter written by a AI tool, and then it gets applied to however many roles that have a similar title. And then it goes into the queue of that company. And so now you have an ATS, an applicant tracking system, that's monitoring those resumes coming in. You have a 3-step process where you may have some human oversight, but it's largely the technology evaluating the technology and the output of that. So I think that's where the recruiting process, or people, and it is a people business. So you need to have recruiters who know the right people and have the right network of profiles to step in and really help cut through a lot of that that noise.
So when it becomes too easy to apply for a job, I mean, executive search has its own processes, maybe their own talent pools or the way they reach out to passive candidates, right? So when an agency or a firm like yours takes on that volume of candidates, I mean, is there a workaround that you have to really speed that process up?
I mean, it's the network that we have. So I typically, if there's a ton of applicants coming through, you can go through and just knowing the function and knowing the client, you can see profiles that are going to fit and which ones aren't pretty quickly. But a lot of it is going after passive candidates who are not actively looking around, and going and finding those people that have the right industry experience, the right pedigree, and the right functional roles within those companies. And then hopefully we've had conversations with them previously for other engagements that we've had. So we have a knowledge of what their capabilities are, and we know them as a person to know if they are the right cultural fit as well for our client.
Now, moving on to the next question. So I saw this LinkedIn report from this year that says that by 2030, 70% of the skills used in most jobs will change. I mean, we are seeing AI emerging as a major catalyst. So how has this affected the way you evaluate a candidate's potential versus maybe their core technical capabilities?
Yeah, we've always looked at trying to make sure that the candidate, of course, has the functional skills, but also has the soft skills, the cultural fit for our clients. And so when you marry those two together, that's when you get the ideal profile. And I think with the use of AI becoming more and more important, or a component of a person's job, the soft skills are going to be what's going to separate those that are strong candidates and strong workers versus those that are less so. And there was a report that showed in 2024 that there was the highest number of CEO turnovers. So we're already seeing AI becoming impactful to even in the CEO level, because my hypothesis around that is because with AI, the functional components, a lot of the areas of analysis and the like are going to be taken up by a technology. And really, it's the buy-in, the creating of a vision, the storytelling, exactly, of for a leader. And this can now be applied to other parts of the organization as well. But you need to have those soft skills, those storytelling, that being able to get people's buy-in to your vision. That's going to be more important. And so that's where I think these skills are going to be, AI is not going to be able to read a room. They're not going to be able to know who to bring into a conversation at what time to gain that buy-in, and who is the decision maker within those companies that you want to get their support, so that you can then help move that initiative forward. And that's where I think this is going to become more and more important for all levels of an organization, is that buy-in and almost internal sales skill set.
Now, how do organizational needs differ between emerging companies, as you mentioned earlier, versus established corporations? You've seen both sides, right?
Yeah, we've worked with, public companies that are, 100, 10,000, 100,000 size, to the small growth companies that are just getting investments from VCs or private equity. And so starting with those, it really is somebody who has a breadth of experience and has the desire to step in and, of course, you're wearing many hats, but being able to anticipate where there's going to be a gap in the capabilities of the organization, and being able to roll up your sleeves and go and step into, take on that responsibility, even if it's not in your initial job description. It's understanding and really a passion and an interest in finding where those gaps are within the organization and stepping in to address those. Whereas at a more enterprise sized company, it really is understanding the internal network and understanding how to gain buy-in with the peers of that role. So you have to understand what team to bring into the process at what time, so that initiative can move forward. And we have worked with Microsoft over the years, and in that environment, people are successful because they have the internal network and know who the resources are internally to bring in to help get their initiative move forward quickly. Whereas, in a lot of times, a Microsoft person not going to be as effective in a smaller startup because they're used to having those resources around them. They're used to calling on somebody to fill in that gap. Whereas if you're at a small startup, there is nobody to call on to do it yourself. And so it just is a different skill set and different mentality that you are bringing to the table. And so it's difficult because a lot of times you have people or companies that want to have a person that comes with that knowledge of Microsoft, but they realize that they're going to be use such a team surrounding them that they're just not going to be as effective. Even if they have the technical knowledge, they may not have the team building, or I should say team building, but working with a smaller organization and just doing it yourself instead of having some resources to call on.
With such, obviously we've spoken about how, skills and the need for newer skills are going to come very soon. So with such dramatic skills transformation ahead, what might be some ways to attract that kind of talent who would thrive, in such a landscape?
Well, from a client standpoint, we've encouraged our clients to offer trainings, to offer an environment where they can explore and reward their team to find new applications for Gen AI, especially. And so there's a lot of different technologies that are being developed. And so being on, and no one's solved this yet, and no one's been, I would say 100% successful in, hey, here's the answer around how we're going to use Gen AI in our business. What they're doing is asking their employees to try it, figure out ways and use cases, and then share that with the rest of the company on how it's been used successfully in their environment. I think being able to tell the market and tell candidates that we're empowering our team to leverage these new tools, and we're making sure that they are sharing that across the company so that the candidate can feel like they're at the cutting edge of where this technology is going, because no one really has that answer yet. And so that's really and making sure that candidates recognize that the company is curious and appetite for exploring these new solutions and coming up with what's going to be best for them in that environment.
So it's making space for that innovation or that experimental mindset.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, looking ahead, what major shifts do you anticipate in organizational talent needs over the next 5 years, or maybe even 2 years?
2 years, 5 years. Yeah. If things are happening so quickly, I have so here's my thinking around this because we're talking about AI agents. So you have Salesforce who's creating agents. You have all these different capabilities that are being created. And I think from an organizational development, you're going to end up seeing a function that is going to manage the AI agents. And so if you think about like a marketing operations person who is responsible for the marketing stack. And so they're responsible for all the technologies that marketing uses. And so you have an operations person that is responsible for that. Now envision that on a more company-wide standpoint. You have an operations person, an AI operations person who's responsible for these AI agents and creating a workflow that's going to be done by these agents across the different functional areas of the organization. So it's going to be an interesting, so I think this is going to be, maybe it's 2 years down the road when agents are more widely adopted, but then who is in control of those agents within that company and who's evaluating the capabilities, understanding the sensitivity around information sharing, who's going to control the what's shared, what's not shared. There's a lot of compliance issues that come around. So you need to have someone that's going to be overseeing all that in its entirety to make sure that you end up doing this correctly and that best practices are being adhered to.
So when you speak to your clients, Chris, do you bring this proposition to them? Do you talk to them about this idea, and what might be the kind of feedback that you get?
This is just really early stages for this. So I haven't really talked to clients as I've been doing a search around this need yet. I've talked to more functional leaders who are saying we're using agents in this capacity. And so it's been more of a part of their workflow in silos. I just see that the need over time is going to be bringing that all together. So it's a environment where, like I said, security, and all these other elements are being considered as they end up using those tools more and more.
Yeah. And finally, Chris, what advice would you give someone who is starting out in this space today, the talent space?
Well, I think anybody that's starting in this has to like people and has to like talking to people and being curious about what motivates a person. So again, we try to focus on, of course, understanding the functional expertise that our candidates have, but also their motivation. And so that comes down to being curious about what their goals are, where they're going to end up in their career, where they want to end up in their career in the future. I remember I was talking to head of marketing at a small company, and we were talking about their motivation, where they can see themselves in 5-10 years, and it was just getting a real good sense of that person's motivation. And then 6 months later or 9 months later, I had a role that I said, "Oh, wait a second! I had this great conversation with this person. I'm going to end up bringing that person into the if they're available into this recruiting process because her motivation was exactly what we were looking for in this person." And so it's those kind of curiosity and just wanting to solving that puzzle and just finding that right person for that right fit. And there's, sometimes when that happens, quite frankly, it's magical when you have right fit to the right team. And then all of a sudden that team does something extraordinary because everybody's working so well together. It just feels great, but that comes down to asking questions, being curious, and taking that conversation to that next level of not just being a transaction, but being a talent advisor, to people, and making sure that those combinations are fitting correctly.
Well, thank you very much for your time and all these insights, Chris. I'm sure whoever's listening in might want to connect with you and also pick up a conversation with you. So this is the time to drop in your contact details or if you have a website.
Sure. Yeah. Our website is www.laurel-group.com. And I'm at Chris Berta on LinkedIn. And like I said, I'm in Seattle. And so feel free to look me up. And if you have questions about recruiting or executive search, happy to answer those.
Thank you again, Chris. And we have been in conversation with Chris Berta, partner at Laurel Group. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned for more episodes from All-In Recruitment on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify.